The assumption here is you know something about AWS, how to create an account, log into the management console, and reach the Amazon Connect service. So there's plenty of information out there on how to open an account, work in the free tier, that kind of information I'm not going to go into. I'm going to start here from the fact that you've logged into your console, you've gone to services, you've selected Amazon Connect, and we're now at the screen in which we're going to add a new instance. Please note that instances are regionally based. Today you can open one in Virginia, Oregon, Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, Frankfurt, London. As time goes on, other regions will begin to support Connect. It's typical of how AWS rolls out features. Typically, they start in Virginia and then are rolled out across the globe. We're going to set up a new instance. And the first thing we need to do here is give this a name. Now, what you will want to know is that the decision you make on this screen is foundational. By that I mean, once you do this, you can't change it. And what I want to do here is point out that the default is going to be create a name. And the assumption here is that the users we create will be authorized and authenticated through the Amazon Connect instance. If you want to use Active Directory or single sign-on, some other solution, you have to make that decision now. You cannot create the instance and then later on come back and say, oh, I want to use Active Directory, or I want to use some external security assertion markup deal. You have to make that decision now. So for purposes of this tutorial, go ahead and give it a name that makes sense to you. Hit the next step. You're going to set up your admin user. Go ahead and give it a username and password. Understand that login names, the username that you'll be using to log in is case sensitive. Make a note of that. Go ahead, hit the next step. Here you're going to set up your telephony options. I can't imagine why this question is even asked, but apparently I don't understand this, but it's not important. You're going to want to make incoming calls, take incoming calls, and I assume you're going to want to make outbound calls. So go ahead and say yes to these things. We can control through security profiles who can make an outbound call, so we can deal with that later. Next, we're going to set up data storage. By default, we're going to create an S3 bucket here and add access to CloudWatch. I think it's pointed out here because these cost a nominal amount of money, but it's an additional cost for an S3 bucket and CloudWatch. Go ahead and set these up. By default, your data will be put here and here. You can change these if you have an existing S3 bucket. And at that point, go ahead, review all of the information, and then you're going to go ahead and create an instance. This will take a couple of minutes to complete. When your instance has been completely established in the AWS cloud, you'll get this screen, success. Let's get started. And at this point, you'll get your welcome. Go ahead and select you're going to want to select a telephone number for your country. I happen to be in the States. Pick a direct dial number. Go ahead. You can pick something. Typically, you're going to change this later, or you're going to call forward an existing number to this. So don't be hung up about this. It can be a direct dial number or a toll-free number. It'll go ahead and give you a chance to test this number. I'm going to continue. Uh, and you're going to get a suggested uh, publication process. So you're going to look at exploring channels. You're going to set up your hours of operation, create queues, create prompts, create contact flows, create routing profiles, and configure users. These are probably the order in which you want to do things. And we'll be working through this process as we continue through the tutorial. Um, Let us go ahead and continue by going to contact flows. Now, contact flows are really step 5 here. We will do these other steps, but if you're going to follow through on the tutorial, you're going to want to load up some contact flows. There's a link that is provided or referenced here that will enable you to download a library of pre-configured contact flows from the Dr. VoIP website, and you will use them through the balance of this tutorial. What I want to point out here is that there are default contact flows already established, and there are several pieces of information you need to note here. First, contact flows have types. And look through the list here, you'll see the various types. Most of your work will be here with basic contact flows, but be aware that there are hold flows and customer queue flows. What's important about this is twofold. One, the contact options available to a particular flow are based on the type. So for example, if you're designing the experience you want your customers to have while they are on the hold flow, you're going to configure a customer queue hold flow. That flow, as you work through it, you'll find that you can't transfer to another flow. It's just not an available option in a customer queue flow. So the takeaway here from this little speech is note the queue types that you're working with, the contact flow type. When you hit create a contact flow here, the assumption is that you want to create a contact flow, just a basic contact flow. If you want to create something different, you're going to select I want to create a customer hold flow. I want to create an agent hold flow, and so forth. The ones we'll be working with mostly are contact flows and customer queue flows. So just be aware of that. The second item you need to be aware of is that these defaults are used out of the box, whether you configured them in a contact flow or not. For example, every call into your contact center will put the caller on hold while it goes to look for an agent. Even if an agent is available during the time the system is looking to connect with that agent, which may take anywhere from a few seconds to a minute or so, that person will be listening to most likely the default customer queue. And if we were to open that up, we'd see that it's configured already to play a fairly generic message. We love you. Please hold on. You'll be answered in the order in which your call was received. Then it plays some music and interrupts every 2 minutes. So if you want a different experience, you're going to have to create it and put it in your contact flow, which brings me to my third point. The third point is never change the name of a default contact flow. If you want to use this as a template to modify your own creation, please do a save as first. The reason for this is this contact flow, you can go ahead and change this name to anything you want. But the fact of the matter is every contact flow, every resource in AWS and in the contact center, as you see as we get into more advanced concepts, has a unique ARN. And this is what's actually referenced. So interactions in the call center, every interaction, voice, chat, whatever, comes into the contact center. It has a unique contact ID. That contact ID we will work with later on, but if you have a reference to transfer a call to a queue, for example, the queue is referenced not by the name, it's referenced by the ARN. So just changing the name alone is not sufficient to affect the changes you want to make. Okay, and the biggest mistake newbies make when configuring Amazon Connect is that they think that you can just change the name, publish it, and you have now created a unique contact flow. The problem is if this default customer queue is used elsewhere in the system, it's still going to transfer to this ARN, which is going to have been modified by you. So, takeaway. Use these defaults as basic templates to create new experiences, but first do a save as. So we might do a save as here, and we'll give it a new name and do a save as. And now we can go ahead and make our changes and we'll reference it by this new name. And what you'll notice here is it has a new ARN. So it's a very, very important concept, guys. Uh, it'll save you a lot of time if you understand that up front. So again, contact flows have types. These defaults may be used in your instance, even if you did not put them someplace. Out of the box, these defaults are active. You cannot delete them. If you want to use them as a template, make sure to do a save as. It's not necessary, but to better follow along with this tutorial, you will want to reference the Dr. VoIP website. Perhaps there's a link associated with this video that will take you to a zip file that contains the contact flows that we've created for this tutorial. You can import them. So go find that file, get it on your computer. It's a zip file, unzip it, and you will find a number of contact flows that we have created to help you get started, and we will refer to them throughout this tutorial. So basically, you're going to click on Create Contact Flow, and you're going to say Import. And import, you're going to select, and you're going to go find the Dr. VoIP Quick Start library. You've unzipped it, and you'll find a number of predefined contact flows. Go ahead and load these one at a time. All of them are of the contact flow type except the queue hold callback. When you go to import that, make sure you import it as a customer queue hold flow. So as I pointed out in the previous clip, these have different types, but all of these are pretty much contact flow. So go ahead, start at the top, go ahead and import them all. Just say import and go ahead and get that loaded. You will not be able to hit the publish button for reasons we'll talk about, but the script makes references to, for example here, in the get customer input, press 1. It says transfer to this queue. That queue doesn't exist yet. You haven't created it until such time as this is updated with your personal configuration options pointing to the queues you want to point to. You won't be able to publish it. So just go ahead and save it. All right, so go ahead and save it and get the rest of your contact flows imported. Okay, let's go back to the main screen. I want to point out a couple of actions that we'll be taking throughout the tutorial. Before you logged in as the administrator, on the main Amazon Connect portal page, you have these navigation aids here. You have a login URL. This is basically the login that you would give your agents. They're not necessarily required to log into the Amazon Connect management console. We don't want that, right? We want the agents to go to a link that just logs them into the contact center. You can also log in here as an administrator. So this link here is what you're going to publish out there. This is information about the ARN for your instance, and you may from time to time need to reference this, the name of your instance, etc. If you're planning to use the Dextr dashboard, um, you're going to, or Salesforce integration, we'll cover that as well. You're going to need to whitelist those things. So you'll come here and you'll go to application integration. And I would encourage you right now to go ahead and add go https go.dextr.cloud. And basically what you're doing here is to whitelist that URL, making it accessible by Amazon Connect. Later on, when we add Salesforce or Freshdesk or Zoho or any of the external integrations, you'll need to whitelist them there as well. Later on, we'll be adding some Amazon Connect Lambda functions later on in the more advanced sections of the tutorial. And what you're going to want to do there is add them. If we create a Lexbot, we will want to add the Lexbot as well. So you're not done here. I just wanted to point that out to you so that you would know where it existed. And later on, when we make references to whitelisting, you'll know to go to application integration. If you're going to use the Dextr dashboard, which we'll cover later on, go ahead and whitelist Dextr at this point. So again, we don't want everybody to have to log in through the management console to access Amazon Connect. In fact, your system administrator may have set things up so you can't do that. You're going to want to make use of this link here. You can click log on as an administrator here, and this will take you right in to your configuration stuff. But just to demonstrate something here, let's click on that link. You're going to get this kind of setup. Go ahead and log in. Your agents would do the same thing. You're logging in as the administrator that we previously and it's going to take you to the same place. The issue is you don't necessarily have to come in through the Amazon management console. You can directly come into the Connect instance. As a system administrator configuring Amazon Connect, you're going to yes, come in through the management console because to get to other services like Lex, DynamoDB, Lambda, which are certainly going to be tools you will need in more advanced configurations of Amazon Connect, you'll need to be in the management console. But to do the basic configuration, to start setting up your hours and creating queues, you can just do that through the link. And if you've been following along in sequence here, you've uploaded your Dr. VoIP quick start. and you should have a list that looks something like that. And we will begin to work with these as we start configuring our Amazon Connect instance. So let's start with our configuration, and we'll use the suggested format here. We've already, when we started the instance configuration, we already set up a telephone number, so you've already done that. You can go ahead and uh, obtain additional phone numbers if you like. Note that the phone number that you set up goes to sample inbound contact flow. Again, just pointing out that default contact flows and samples are already live and being used. You're going to modify these is a better way to look at your configuration. So when you have a phone number, you go here and select where you want that phone number to point. We'll come back to that, but you have the ability to add more phone numbers. You can also, later on when we talk about configuring chat, we'll set up a chat integration and you'll be able to test chat as well. What we're going to do now is set up hours of operation. That's suggested too. So I want to go here over at navigation. We're going to go to hours of operation. There is something called basic hours. It's already been established for you. You might have a need to modify these, or you might have a need to create a different schedule. You will find that you can set up hours of operation for to be used by different queues. So we can either modify this or we can create a new one. So let's assume for purposes of this tutorial that we're going to create a new schedule. Let's give it a name and say MainGreeting. And you can give it now you're configuring on hours, and on hours are all you need to configure. You will set, because if it's not on hours, it's off hours. It's just that simple. So what we're going to do here is configure this for the time zone that we want. Most of AWS is GMT or Zulu time if you prefer. Offsets from Zulu and GMT. You can go ahead and pump in whatever you want. I'm going to select Eastern Standard if you want to be more specific. In this case, we can set New York. So just go ahead and pick what you want here. Come on. America, New York. Okay. And then you'll go ahead and modify these. If you're not open on Sunday, you might want to remove that. And if you're not open on Saturday, you might want to remove that. Then you can go in here and change these hours. So for purposes of this tutorial, our main greeting is going to be the hours of 9 to 5. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that. Now you can apply a schedule to queues. So for example, customer service is only 9 to 5, but tech support is open 24 hours. So you would create a different hours of operation for that eventuality. So next on our suggested configuration process is create queues. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll navigate over to queues. And as you'll see, there is, consistent with previous statements, out of the box, there's already some defaults established and some samples for you to work with. I leave the basic queue there and I use it for testing, and I put all my queues in the basic routing profile. We'll talk about routing profiles a little bit later. But right now, let's configure a new queue. So we'll add a new queue. We'll give it a name, and let's say customer service. And I'm sure you can come up with a better description than the name, but you're going to go ahead and give it hours of operation. And obviously, we've configured main greeting. Now, had we wanted this queue to have a different set of hours, we would have created different hours. The outbound caller ID and name and whisper flow are sometimes arbitrary, and I'll explain that as we go forward. But right now, you can only search for a number that you have already established for your instance. So let's go ahead and select that. You can give it an outbound name if you like, but depending on your carriers, this is going to change. And I'll tell you right now that later on you're going to want to know how to change your caller ID. There is an advanced configuration step to do that. But basically, at this point, understand you can't display an ID that is not already configured in your instance. So if you think you're going to put your company's main business number here and name, it's not going to work. Outbound whisper, optional. What you're going to want to do here is either not have one or use the default. And this is something that is played to the caller when you make an outbound call. Now, you don't have to have one, and you can clearly copy this default, save as, and modify it to suit your goals, right? And we're going to set up a maximum number of callers in queue. Um, you can set this if you like. You don't see a need to do it now, but basically what you're going to say is, I may want to branch to some other solution if the number of people already holding for agents in the customer service queue is greater than 10. We'll set that limit there, and you'll see later on as we do some contact flows, you'll see how this plays in. And then outbound here, what we're looking for is quick connects. Quick connects have not yet been configured, so you can't select any. We'll come back to quick connects a little bit later when we get to that configuration step. So here we are, we've set up our first support queue. Let's go ahead and create another queue, and we'll call that queue tech support. Washed my hands this morning, can't do a thing with them. Go ahead and create that. We're going to give it the same hours of operation. Going to set the same outbound phone number. We're not going to set a limit on this, and there are no quick connects. So go ahead and add that instance. Okay, so at this point, we've got we've got the default basic queue, and we have customer service and tech support now defined as customer service queues. Okay, next on our to-do list is create prompts. So once again, let's go over here to the prompt. And there are a number of default prompts already provided in the system. You can create new prompts. I'm going to suggest that the one you want to do now is in the zip file that I hope you're using to follow along with this tutorial. You're going to choose the file, and what I suggest you upload the ring wave file. And I find the ring wave file to be very useful. You can go ahead and preview that. It's just a ringtone, and I'll show you where we're going to use that. But go ahead and then create it. It has now been added to the library. These are default prompts that come with the basic configuration. You will certainly create your own and upload them later. Here's my recommendation on prompts. Use the text to speech functionality until you get your prompts defined. I can tell you that after years of building IVRs and call centers, and the thing that always stops me from being able to execute the statement of work is that the customers haven't created their prompts yet. And so what you need to do is use text to speech when you get the prompts to the point that you like them, then go ahead and get them professionally recorded and upload them. I'll tell you right now that the text to speech can be manipulated by a speech markup language, and you can do some really excellent prompts using text to speech. So it's your choice. But for now, we're just going to upload the ring wave, and we'll deal with prompts later on in the configuration. So next on the to-do list is to create contact flows. Now, contact flows, we're going to be spending most of the tutorial time in this space. So I'm going to skip this right now because we'll come back to this. And what we're going to talk about now is creating routing profiles and configuring users. We may also take a quick look at security profiles, agent states, and agent hierarchy. So with that in mind, we'll do contact flows in great detail after we knock off creating routing profiles and configuring users. So what's a routing profile? So if we go to routing profiles enable you to create how you want to associate your users with the queues that those users can participate in. So a user that is in the routing profile basic queue will get calls that might be different than a search for a queue here, like the customer service queue. So let's do that. Let's again, consistent with not messing with the defaults, we're going to add a new profile. And in this new profile is going to be the customer service profile. And it contains only customer service. Okay. And we're going to make it voice. And you can also make it possible for people in this routing profile also to handle chat. And you can make a decision about how many chat sessions this person can handle. Now, it's important to point out here that currently you can handle both voice calls and chat calls if you're part of this routing profile, but you cannot do them simultaneously. AWS does not currently support that. You can have a voice call, but you cannot simultaneously take a chat call, or you can take a chat call and you won't be able to take a voice call. You can determine how many chats, I think it's 1 to 5 chats per agent. So someone associated with this profile will be able to take voice calls and chat calls up to 5 per agent if they're associated with this. And here we're going to say, let's set up customer service, and we will enable it. You could just enable it for voice only, right? We could have a customer service group that only handles voice calls, and we could have another customer service that is chat calls only. In this case, we're going to enable both customer service, and chat calls. We can establish a priority and a delay, and we also select what outbound queue should be used by agents in this routing profile. Um, I'm going to suggest that they use the customer service. So if this queue had a separate phone number, you might want that phone number displayed on an outbound call, and that might be the reason to do this. So let's go ahead and add, let's go ahead and save that, right? We've got a routing profile now called customer service. Let's go ahead and create another profile. Obviously, we'll make this one for tech support. And tech support, we'll say it's tech support only agents. And I'll tell you what, let's make this a little more complex. We'll say this is voice only. All right, go ahead and select tech support, enable it for voice. And we'll go ahead, whoops, it wants me to select an outbound. And at that point, oops, okay, and we'll now be able to go ahead and so we now have customer service and tech support voice only. And maybe we'll create another profile, and this one will be tech support chat. And these people will be chat agents only. Okay, and we'll enable it for chat. And obviously it'll be part of the tech support. Okay, so we should be able to save that now. And we now have four routing profiles. I like to use the basic to host all. So when I'm testing, I assign my user to the basic profile. And at that point, they're a member of all queues and will get phone calls from all queues. So to summarize on routing profiles, you're going to create routing profiles and think of them as a way to associate your users with the queues that those users can access. And you'll see that shortly as we begin to configure users. So let's go configure users. We'll go under user management. And the one user that we created at the onset is here. Let's go ahead and configure another user. Now, you can also click on Show Advanced Options. This you'll use later when you're searching for users if your library of users gets much larger. What we want to do here is just add a new user, and you can also upload users from a CSV file. If you click this link here, you will download a CSV file that you can take off outside and open up Excel and do this configuration in a template and then upload your users from that template. We're going to create a couple of users here manually. So go ahead and hit next. Let's there is a limit to the logon name. And so make sure you use a email address. Now, a lot of folks might want to take the email address and use that as the logon name. There is a character limitation here, so if you have a big long domain name, you may not be able to get away with that. And this is why previously, when we set up the instance, we made a decision. And had you wanted to use email names, for example, you probably should have gone with the Active Directory or single sign-on option. Here, we're going to create a login. Make sure you understand logins are case sensitive. So G DeGray is the logon here. We're going to give it a password. Um, you're going to, whoops, and here's where you're going to assign the user to a routing profile. So maybe this user only works in customer service, or maybe they only work in tech support, or we only want them to handle voice calls in tech support. I'm going to put this user in the basic profile, and as previously discussed, that contains all queues. Uh, you will then select a security profile. And we'll take a quick look at security profiles in just a moment. The system comes to you with admin, agent, call center manager, quality analyst, and these determine the features that these folks would have. I'm going to give this person an agent profile. Soft phone, typically you're going to use soft phone. I think it's an excellent solution. If you've got a good high quality internet and you've got a computer that supports a USB headset with a microphone, you're in business. You could set it to a desk phone if you like. That desk phone would need to have a 10-digit DID number associated with it. I don't like the desk phone option because it's going to significantly increase the time that a caller is waiting on hold while we go locate that agent. Because what's going to happen is we go find the available agent, and then now we have to out dial 10 digits to ring their desk phone. So it's your choice. I'm going to go with soft phone. I recommend that you go ahead and change this regardless. Let's set it to 30 seconds. So after call work means that we want to give the agent some time when they hang up a phone call to complete some paperwork before they get slammed with another call. Auto answer, if you check that box, the agent doesn't have to accept the call. We're going to switch on their speaker and start talking to them. Agent hierarchy we'll cover at a later time. I would tell you that this is just a way to organize your agents. Let's assume that you have agents on the East Coast and on the West Coast, and maybe you want to set up let's route to our East Coast folks first, that kind of a thing. So we've added a user here, and we should be able to save it. And we now have our first user. You go ahead and set up your users for purposes of this tutorial. So we've covered routing profiles, we've covered adding. Now that we've got some users configured, let's take a look at agent status. Agent status, to get a call, you must be in a routable status. The only one is really available. What am I talking about here? If you bring up your CCP, which is your basic uh, telephone interface in Amazon Connect, right? You're going to see here that you can be available or you could be offline. That's the only two states you can be in. Um, but we want to create some others. So we're going to go here, we're going to say add a new agent state, and let's put in a few of the more common ones. So break, lunch, And come on, can't you spell? And coffee. Okay, and go ahead and save that. And maybe another state would be assigned work. And go ahead and save that. Okay, and you could go ahead and create these different states um, to describe uh, the status of your agent. Understand, you see these are offline. You're not going to get any phone calls. Routable, yes, you will be available for a call and you will get it because you're available. Custom, break, assigned work, uh, uh, you know, team meeting, whatever you want to put there, those are not routable, and therefore, if an agent is in that state, they will not get a chat, they will not get a voice call. I'll also use this to point out later on, we'll have a contact flow step that says check staffing, and you'll be able to select either available staffing or online. And those concepts relate to this. If we send a caller to a queue and we say check staffing and only send the caller to this queue if someone is available, that means they're sitting there waiting for a phone call. If they're on break, we don't want to send the caller to that queue. We only want to send a caller to the queue if someone is available. Now, generally, you have a call center because you want to queue people, but I think it's important that you know when to queue. So understand that you can set up agent states and you can enable them for use by everybody in the CCP. And in fact, if we go back to the CCP now, we should be able to see that we have a state called assign work break and offline. Put myself offline for a moment. Before we dig into the scripts that I hope you have uploaded to follow the tutorial, um, not necessary, you can create them as we go along. Let's just cover a few aspects about contact management, excuse me, contact flows. So you're going to typically, you're going to create a contact flow. Keep in mind that you select the type of contact flow you want to create. You're going to give it a name, and you'll have a palette on the left side with different options for your contact flow. I like to call them steps. Uh, you have a series called Interact, and these are basically things like play prompt, get the customer input, store the customer input, and so forth. You have set, which we use primarily to set up some parameters like do we want recording, do we want things logged, do we want to have a particular contact flow associated with this main flow, for example, a customer queue flow hold, branching, uh, hours of operation is a branch. You know, if it's on hours, go this way. If it's off hours, go this way. Check staffing. These are options for branching. Integrate. Typically, you integrate by invoking a Lambda function. When we look at advanced concepts, we'll go into this in great detail. Transfer and terminate options. Uh, Hang up, transfer to a queue, transfer to a flow, transfer to a phone number. So these are all options available to us. What you need to understand is that this list, I think all of these categories will be available in every contact flow, but you'll find that some of these, for example, in a queue hold, you will not be able to transfer to a flow. Transfer to a queue. Some of these things will just not be available depending on the contact flow type. So familiarize yourself with some of the options here. and we'll go into them in greater detail as we start to look at our initial configuration. You basically you're going to just drag these guys out here and connect them up, and we'll look at this. Okay, at this point, let's start working with our contact flows. Now, if you've downloaded the quick start contact flows, you should have found one called MainGreeting. And consistent with what I've tried to explain, you probably you can modify this if you like, but you might also just want to open it up and do a save as something else. But at any rate, when you open this up, you'll find that you'll remember we have a particular type of contact flow. This is just a contact flow of type inbound. It has a unique ARN, and you're going to see here contact flow steps, interact, settings, branch, integrate, terminate, and transfer. So typically, when you create a contact flow, you're going to get a blank screen and you're going to drag these puppies out on the screen from these various options here on the navigation page. We've already done some for you, and I'll just walk you through this. So I like to do the initial setup. So the call comes in. First thing we want to do is set the voice. You can select any voice you want. I happen to like Matthew's voice, but there's Kimberly and Joey, and there's all kinds of voices to choose from. We're going to head and set up our logging behavior. We want to enable this. And later on, when we look at some advanced configuration, CloudWatch, log search, you'll see the benefit of that. We'll set the call recording behavior. Here we want to record both the agent and the customer. We could have picked one or the other. We're going to set the hold flow. And here we're selecting the default agent hold flow. We talked about this previously. Same with the customer hold flow and the whisper flow. What is the whisper flow? When the call is transferred to an agent, the agent will get a whisper. And typically the whisper, it can be anything you want, but typically the whisper will be for the queue name. When that agent answers, he'll hear a whisper that says customer service. We do some Lambda function lookup here, which I'll explain later in the advanced configuration options. We're going to set some contact attributes, play a prompt, and here we're going to check for hours. We'll go ahead and select the MainGreeting hours that we previously configured. And up here, we're going to play a get prompt. So very typical that you will set up a call tree. And in this case, we're going to click on it and we'll set up a greeting here. And I think what we want to do here is to say, let's say, press 1 for customer service, press 2 for tech support, or hold for the next team member. Now, what we're doing here is we're using text to speech. I could have selected a prompt from the library, which would enable me to get a previously recorded WAV file. But as I pointed out before, while we're in configuration, let's use the text to speech option here and go ahead and just type it in. You just type in what you want to speak to the caller. Now, I have a tendency to use SSML, which is speech markup language. You should look that up separately. You could just put it as text, and anything that you type in here will be used for prompting the caller. What is SSML, speech markup language? You'll notice here that it says speak. It sets the prosody rate. It sets some time. So what I'm doing here is saying, I want you to speak this, which it would have done by default by just selecting text. But by using speech markup language, I'm able to control the rate of speech. I'm able to put in a break time and do things like that that will help make the speech uh, more understandable and less machine-like. For purposes of this tutorial, you may just want to select text, type in your prompt here, and later on in the advanced section, we'll cover more information about speech markup language. So let's go ahead and save this. Oh, before we save it, we need to go down here, and this normally would be blank. You're going to go ahead and add a condition. And in this case, we've got option 1, we've got option 2, there will be no option 3, no option 4, and there will be a timeout, however, and we can set the timeout at 5 seconds. Let's 5 seconds is good. Go ahead and save that. So at this point, we have 2 options, and we set them up to transfer to customer service and tech support. But as these are now pointing to something else, I could say transfer to queue. So we could go over here and we could, open up our option palette here and say, let me see, transfer, and we could select transfer to queue and put it over here. I don't like to directly transfer to queue. And by the way, you cannot transfer to queue until you set the queue. So it's 2 steps. You have to set the queue and then transfer to the queue. But I like to do that all in a separate flow. So the purpose of the greeting here is to get the setup stuff out of the way and to transfer to flows. So I haven't created those 2 flows yet. We're going to do that next. But let's continue along here. There is always an error exit on most steps here. And I created one called error flow. So anywhere that I have an error, I do a transfer to flow and I select error handler. And that's one of the scripts that I hope you have either created or you're using from the link library I provided. So to summarize, in our main script here, we're going to set up these different parameters, get that out of the way, and then we're going to offer the caller a menu, and we're going to transfer them off. It may be such that you may find that you want to do your setup and then transfer to a main call tree and break this into 2 pieces. But let's go ahead and save this, and then I'll show you how we're going to connect this to these different call flows. As we go through the quick start contact flows, you can create them, or you can download the library that I've provided as part of this tutorial. You will note that we're going to just use these as a template to get started. They have to be modified and they have to be published in a particular order. You'll discover that as you work through this. As we saw, Just now we were looking at the main greeting, and in the main greeting it had several transfer to flows. So what we want to do here is to create those flows because they don't currently exist. So what I'd like to do here is open up the transfer to basic queue, and that's pretty complex. But let's take a look at what we want to do here. The first thing we want to do, and I can't emphasize this enough, is you want to do a save as. And what we want to do here is create the transfer to customer service queue, right? We created that queue, and now we want to create a contact flow for that queue. Um, The first thing that's going to happen when we transfer that, keep in mind that MainGreeting already did the setup of voice and logging and things of that ilk. And what we want to do here is first establish the queue hold flow. And right now, the only one that exists is the default customer queue. We're going to come back later and change that. But as I have pointed out, every call into the system, while it's looking for an agent, is going to put that person on hold while it goes to find that agent. So establishing what that's going to sound like and what options are available, you want to get that defined pretty quickly. Next, in this case here, I could probably just get rid of this because we've done this in the main greeting, right? The main greeting said press 1 for customer service. So what we're going to do here now is set the customer hold experience. We're going to set the working queue. The working queue here is going to be customer service. And as I pointed out before, you can transfer to a queue, you have to set the queue. So before we can transfer, we have to set it. I'm going to get rid of some of these things because basically we just don't need them right now. Basically, we just want to transfer to queue. So we set the queue, we transfer to queue. Let's get rid of some of this stuff here that we're not going to need for this very simple. We're going to change the error handler to be something that exists already. Now, here's a perfect example of how I can't select something that has not been published. And this is not my selection. I've created one for how I want things handled here. I'll just select something just for purposes of being able to publish this. And this is it. Now, the only thing that we might want to do that's different here is we might want to do a check hours of operation. So let's go ahead and take this guy and move it here. And if it's what hours, well, we're going to check the specific hours, and we set them up before. If you wanted to, you could have set up a separate schedule for customer service, but we're going to use this one for now. And on hours, we basically just want to select the customer service queue and then transfer to queue. If there's an error, we want to send it to our error handler. And at capacity, we did not necessarily set a capacity here, but we might want to do something like transfer this off to, I don't know, let's transfer it to a flow. I have a flow called transfer to voicemail. Let's go ahead and put that here. At the moment, it has not been defined. So I'm doing two things in this tutorial. One, showing you how to copy save as, setting, showing you some of the options. and also showing you that the order of publication is important. I won't be able to publish this queue yet because it's going to refer to some stuff that doesn't quite exist. So what I'd like to do here, by the way, we have on hours. What about after hours? Well, after hours, I probably want to transfer that off to voicemail as well. Better yet, I might want to create a prompt first that says, you've reached us. I might have text to speech. You have reached us after hours. Please hold while we transfer to the message center. Let's go with that. It's text right now. Later on, we'll talk about SSML formatting. So here you can just delete this or go over here and move it. But what we do here is just say out of hours, we want to play this prompt, and then we want to transfer to voicemail. And if there's an error, we want to send it to the error handler. So let's quickly save this and go back out here to contact flows. And in contact flows, let's go find the error handler. Transfer to notify number, transfer to voicemail. I guess I didn't import the error handler, so let's go ahead and create an error handler. And you'll begin to see how order of production is important. So what I want to do here is just play a prompt that says, please hold while we transfer you to voicemail. So actually it's going to be, this is the error handler, so we want to say something a little bit different. We seem to have a system outage at this time. Please hold for the message center. Okay, so that's the text we want played. And I'll come back to this again because we now have to go set up the voicemail option. I'm going to call this transfer to transfer to, we're not transferring to anything. Let's just call this the error handle. You're going to use this quite frequently, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's go get the contact flow for voicemail, transfer to voicemail. Let's open that one up. I find anytime that I'm going to transfer to an outside phone number that I want to tell people that there may be a period of silence while the call is being set up. So I have here SSML or text to speech that says, please hold during the silence while we transfer you to the message center. Okay. And then we have an icon that we got here, transfer to phone number. We drag it over here. And I want to put in a phone number here, my voicemail system, which I'm going to say is 760-444-6119. And also, when I call that number, I want to output an extension number. So pause extension number. So this is actually a phone number to an auto attendant. Change this to at least 45 seconds. It's just been my experience that sometimes 30 seconds is not sufficient. Do we want to resume the contact flow after disconnect? There are situations in which you may want to do that, but here we're going to say no. We want to send some DTMF. We could also send the caller ID and the caller name if we wanted to, but let's just terminate this. So And the error, unfortunately, can't be to the error handler again because for some reason there was an error. We're just going to hang up. So this should be something we can now publish. Okay, so the contact flow has been saved successfully. And if we go back to contact flows now, we can see that if we go to transfer to voicemail, it is now published. Okay, sometimes it's helpful to add a note here so you remember what this one is. So we had the error handler, which we could not publish before. Let's go back to the error handler because we want to do with here is to go ahead and now we can transfer it to, by the way, when importing scripts, it is sometimes necessary to reselect, uh, even though it already said that. Let's go ahead and select transfer to voicemail, and then we want to hang up. We should now be able to publish this. So again, the lesson here is several fold configuring a contact flow, but I'm also showing you that your error that you may have to set up some of your contact flows referenced in your main greeting example here. So in the main greeting, we were referencing an error handler, and we were referencing a voicemail. We couldn't publish the main greeting because we hadn't actually published these subsidiaries yet. The queue hold callback. So I'm going to want to play with this several times, but right now I'm going to say, let's uh, let's grab this guy. Let's do a save as, and this is going to be the customer service uh, callback. So let's call this customer service queue hold with callback, and do a save as. And the reason for this is we may want the contact flow for the main greeting, for customer service to be different than the options that someone at tech support handles. So we'll come back to this a little bit later. I don't think I can publish this yet because I think it refers to, sure it does. Here's error one. It refers to hours that don't exist. So let's go select the main greeting hours that we previously set up in the, let's go here and it says transfer to call, transfer to queue. It's referencing a queue that didn't exist. I want to transfer this to a callback queue, and that will be the customer service queue. Let's go ahead and select that. We'll cover some of those options in advanced configuration, and I think we can go ahead and publish this now. This will we still can't publish the main greeting because in the main greeting we reference a transfer to tech support and we have not yet configured that. Let's go back and finish the transfer to customer service. We'll take that guy and let me see. Right now we can in fact select the customer service queue hold callback. So we got this out of the way. If people selected customer service, we want them to be able to select the customer service queue hold, and this will define the experience they have while they're waiting for an agent in the customer service routing profile. We've set the hours of operation, we've set the working queue, we're transferring to that queue. If there's an error, we now want to transfer to our error handler, which we can now select. We also set up a transfer to voicemail option now, so let's go ahead and select that. And at this point, this guy should be good to go and we should be able to publish him. Oops, what mistake have you made? You forgot to handle your errors. Now, This is a transfer to voicemail, so the error for anything that might fail there would be a transfer to the flow called error handler. But what do you do if your error handler is got a problem? Unfortunately, at the moment, the quick and simple solution, not very customer friendly, is to just disconnect and hang up. But we should now be able to publish this. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing before we go back to the create one of these transfer functions for tech support. We're going to go to contact flows and we're going to grab the customer service hold experience and we're now going to do a save as. And in this save as, we're going to change this to technical support. Okay, and that's so that we can create a unique experience for the folks in the waiting for tech support agent. And we'll cover this a little bit later in greater detail, but what it does here is it plays some music and care messages and then ultimately offers them an option to have a callback without losing their place in queue. And in this case, obviously, we would want that to go to the technical support queue, not the customer service queue. So let's go ahead and save that. We should be able to publish this. And we're good here. Now, finally, we can go back to the contact flows. We have one more to set up here. Let's grab the transfer to customer queue. Let's open that up and let's do a save as. And this time it's going to be tech support, right? Transfer to tech support. And go ahead and save that. And tech support transfer. Let me see, the customer queue we want to select is different now. We want to use the technical support hold experience. We want to check the hours of operation. You could have created a different schedule here for hours of operation on tech support. We set the working queue. We don't want it to be customer service. We want the working queue to be tech support. And let's go ahead, handle the off hours. We should be able to transfer to voicemail. As I said, sometimes when you're importing scripts, you just have to go in here and reselect something. If it pops up as an error, we have our error handler, and this is kind of extraneous here. Let's get rid of him. We should be able to publish this now. Great. So let us finally get back to the main greeting. If we go to main greeting, and in main greeting, we weren't able to publish this before because it referenced things that didn't exist. So we set up our greeting and we said dial one. Let's refresh our memory here. Okay, we said press one for customer service. Okay, so what we want to do here is if they press one, we want to transfer to, and this is why we couldn't publish it before because this didn't exist. We had to go first create that. So if they select that, we want to transfer to customer queue. Attributes is something we'll discuss in an advanced configuration tutorial, but right now we're just going to transfer there. If they dial 2, we want to transfer to the flow called transfer to tech support. And we need to deal with a default. We're going to say the default is transfer to customer service. And timeout will also transfer to customer service. You could have different options for that. What is timeout? If someone calls in here and they don't press 1 or 2, eventually it'll time out, or it will default. We also need error here, so error handling. Let's go ahead and select the error handler. And we've got an error handler here. I just want to go ahead and select it. And I think we're good to go here. Oops, I see a reference here that may keep us from publishing this. Yes, we wanted to, after hours, transfer them to the after hours call handler. We have a voicemail thing here, so let's just reselect it. It's an example of sometimes when you import, it you need to tweak it a bit. Same thing here. We have an error handler, but apparently it wants us to select that. And what I'm going to do here is transfer to flow. I'm going to select transfer to voicemail for right now so we can publish this guy. And later on, we'll talk about an after hours call handler. But let's go ahead and get this published. And now that it is successfully published, we can go back to our phone numbers, and we can go ahead and take this phone number and set it to the main greeting, which now appears as an option. It didn't appear as an option before because, and we'll say, go ahead. And at this point, we have an operating system. We have a system that if you call the phone number, it's going to answer with the main greeting. The main greeting points to 2 customer service queues. We transfer them off to the appropriate customer service or tech support queue. And each of those queues has a call handler for the user's experience while on hold. Okay, at this point, we've completed a basic 2 queue call flow, contact flow, and we've attached it to our phone number. So what we want to do now is test it, see what we can do to make it better, and let's also make sure it works, right? So if you punch your little phone icon up here, keep in mind that I'm logged in as the system admin, and I'm going to take myself out of available and say that I'm on assigned work. And you know as well as I do that I'm the only agent in the system right now. So the call is going to come in. It's going to go through the setup that we've already discussed. We're going to do an hours check. And the hours check is then going to be on hours, and it's going to offer this prompt here. Actually, it plays a little CYA prompt before it gets to the menu, and then we're going to select, let's say, customer service and see if we get a phone call. Okay, so having said that, where did our telephone go? There it is. And this is a default. You can see that I'm assigned work. I'm going to go ahead and place a phone call. You'll hopefully hear it in the background. I'll turn up the volume. Let's redial. Placing the inbound call.
Please note your phone call may be recorded to help us improve customer service. To better serve you, please choose from the following options. Press 1 for customer service, press 2 for tech support, or hold for the next team members.
Okay, so I'm going to press 1. And
Thank you for your patience as we locate a team member on the shortest possible path.
now, while we're looking for an agent, what's playing here? Well, yes, it's music, but where did that come from? It came from the fact that we set up a call hold for this particular customer service queue, right? We set up an experience. Now, we already see a way to improve this. The agent is logged in, but the agent is an assigned work. What we need to do here is make this agent available. And at that point, you can see the incoming caller ID, and I can go ahead and accept this call. It announced the whisper function, the customer service, and of course, my CCP now shows me options like hold, mute. I could get my number pad, and I can end the call. So one of the things we could have done to improve this was check staffing. So I'm going to go ahead and end the call. Notice that when I end the call, I'm in after call work. I should be there for 30 seconds, and then I'll go back to available. So we've proved our contact flow, and we also see that even though there was an agent logged in, uh, the caller was still on hold. I will tell you that caller would definitely be on hold while we look for an agent anyway. But one of the things we wanted to do here, we did to improve this is we came in, we pressed one, and it transferred to the customer service queue. Let's go to contact flows, find the transfer to customer service queue here. And one of the things that we could have done here, in addition to checking hours, was to check staffing. And I'll tell you what, let us uh, let us do so just as an example. So where do we find that? Oh, check staffing is a branching function. So what to do there, let's move these guys around. This is sometimes a nuisance. What we want to do here is before we transfer someone to queue, now keep in mind we could have done this at capacity, but capacity means how many people are in queue. What we might want to do here is to say, hey, before we transfer to customer service, we want to check staffing. And what does that mean? Check staffing means click on this guy and it should come on. So we want to do, which queue do we want to check? We want to check the customer service queue. Even though we set the queue before, you can even select by agent. You could say, I want to check to see if Gandalf is available. But what's the takeaway here is we're going to find out if there is anybody in the customer service queue available, staffed, or online. Now, in the example we just went through, there was an agent, but the agent was on a break. Who knows how long they're going to be on a break? So we may only want to transfer someone there if someone is in the available state. Given that this is a call center, however, we will want to queue callers if it's staffed. So staffed means um, the agents are logged in. They may be on a phone call right now. And if they're on a phone call right now, let's queue the caller. Um, if they're not online, we probably want to do something different anyway. So here we're going to check staffing. We're going to make sure someone is logged into the queue. The biggest mistake you can make at a call center is to send a caller to a queue that has no agents logged in. So it's a good practice to check staffing here. If it's false, what do we want to do? We probably want to transfer them off to voicemail, or we could transfer them to another queue. Uh, that option would be available to us. We could say transfer to flow. That's an option, but I'm just, for simplicity, going to send them off to voicemail. And clearly, if there's an error, I want to send it to the error handler. And I should be able to publish this now. So at this point, we've been able to configure a basic 2Q call center. You've gone through most of the configuration pieces, and this should get you started. In subsequent videos, we'll start to look at the more advanced configuration options available in Amazon Connect. I hope you have found this informative, and I thank you for viewing.